Wait, I thought of something else, said Lance. Yellow. The woods were yellow. And they shouldn't have been. They should have been green, but they were yellow. As a matter of fact, the whole world was beginning to get yellow. It was unpleasant. And the road, even the road, it wasn't a dirt road, it was paved, it should have been black, it was turning yellow. Now if it had been brick, I would have thought I'm riding my bike into the land of Oz, but trying to make a joke, but Violet didn't think that was funny. She was listening intently. She asked, can you remember anything else? Any signs? And he said, Monacan? I think there was a sign about across the bridge and it was the Monacan River. And there was a Heifer Creek, a little tiny village or something. He was struggling. But he said, and I remember the white or the yellow was getting brighter and brighter, and it was even like turning white when I rode out of those woods, which were deep but not dark and deep. And I should have just, it was so hot, I should have just stayed there and camped out, but I had promises to keep, and I was going to keep it out. That's what I was trying to think, but I was even having trouble thinking. I must have pushed whatever the button or clicked on something on my GPS to change it to make sure that it had the address, your address that Wedge had given me, because how else could I possibly have gotten here? So I must have realized I was getting into trouble. But that's it. I can't remember anything more. Well, Violet said, well, that's a good bit. That helps. But the injuries you have, they're still a mystery. I don't think you were hit by a car. I don't. And even if you'd fallen off your bicycle, it's hard to imagine how you would have been injured like that, your knee. So this is kind of a mystery. And Lance said, well, maybe more will come to me later. And Violet said, well, maybe another beer. And that lightened things up. She said, would you like another Brahma? And Lance said, oh, yes, that was really good beer. I liked that. And she said, well, let's try that. And let's have an aspirin as well. You take a couple aspirin here. And you're probably going to get sleepy and go to sleep. But that aspirin, I'm not going to hurt you anymore. That's just to make you sleep better and maybe take the swelling down a little bit. And he said, well, that's good. And then Violet said, and you know, one other thing after he'd had his beer and all, she said, could I trim your beard up a little bit? You know, Elaine had her chance, and now I'd like to just trim that beard up a little bit because you look kind of scruffy. And Lance said, sure, whatever. And so she worked on him, then just took some scissors and trimmed him up a little bit. So he still looked like a Viking with that long blonde hair, but he looked like a kind of a civilized Viking. And sure enough, he was getting sleepy. Almost, it was early, but he was getting sleepy. He'd had quite a day, and he still had not recovered, not by a long shot. Well, Violet saw that, and he laid down on the couch. But she said, I'm going to get a bell, and I'm going to put it here beside the couch. So if you need help in the night, or if you're in trouble in the night, you ring that bell, okay? You try it. And so he rang the bell. And she said, now don't do the Song of Roland thing and try to tough it out. And Lance said, what are you talking about? And she said, oh, I guess not everybody knows that. You never heard of the Song of Roland? And he said, no. Well, she said, I guess it's because I had that course in college about the oral tradition. And how about the Cid? You ever hear of the Cid? No. Beowulf? Yeah, I heard of Beowulf. She said, well, these are epics. And, Beowulf is the one for English, and of course, the Iliad, the Odyssey for Greek. You've heard of them? Yeah, I've heard of them. Okay, well, I had a whole course on that, and I forget that not everybody knows this stuff. But the Song of Roland, Le Chanson de Roland, that's the French epic, and El Cid, that's the Spanish epic. But anyway, what I meant by that is in the Chanson de Roland, Roland was this big hero, tough guy, but he had a horn, but he wouldn't blow his horn. He was in deep trouble, but he waited and waited and waited and blew his horn too late. Well, don't do that with the bell, okay? You ring that bell, because you're my patient now, and I want to make sure you're okay, and that way I'll be able to sleep good. So he said, okay. And he laid back, and sure enough, in almost no time, he was asleep. Well, Elaine watched him for a while, and then she got out her brush and started to brush her own hair. She was kind of in a hair brushing mood, and that way she could do that and watch. And while she was doing that, she started to sing a song. Ich weiß nicht. She didn't. It wasn't in English, and she actually didn't know what the words meant exactly, but she knew the tune, and she could pronounce those words perfect because she'd heard it one time. There was a German couple, Shirley and Thomas Lindt, visited old friends of her Gmo, and they had been visiting, and Shirley had been brushing her hair and singing. And ich weiß nicht, was soll es bedeutet, dass ich so traurig bin. Too low for me. Ein Märchen aus alten Zeiten, das die Luft ist kühl und es dunkelt. I can't sing like she did. Und rührlich fließt der Rhein. Well, she thought the Rhine, that's the Rhine River. She had, in the past, she'd tried to kind of figure out what that meant because she'd never studied German. Then there was part of it that went, Sie kämmt ihr goldenes Haar. She combs her golden hair. She was guessing. Sie kämmt it mit goldener Kammer und singt ein Lied dabei. She combs it with a golden comb and sings ein Lied. I don't know what that is, but dabei, thereby. She'd worked on this. It didn't really matter. A German would have understood it perfect because her pronunciation and her singing were just beautiful. She had this deep contralto voice, and it was really something to hear. It seemed odd in a girl so young to have such a deep voice. Well, anyway, she's brushing her hair, or combing it, and brushing it actually, and singing her song softly to herself as she always did. And Lance, he wasn't that far asleep yet, and he woke up, but only barely, and he didn't open his eyes at first, and he remembered that tune. And but now there were words, and he did open his eyes, just kind of a crack, and he looked, and there was Elaine singing this song, brushing her gorgeous hair. Now, it wasn't golden hair, it was dark, almost black, dark brown, and it really went beautifully with her complexion, which was that, sometimes it's called olive, I think. You know, her mother was darker. She was, you know, that suggests Eastern European. Well, anyway, Lance, you know, just in and out of sleep, thought to himself, my Lord, she's a beautiful girl. But then the singing put him out, and he didn't wake again until morning.